my job!
And New York's Mayor Zoran Mamdani doubling down on his anti-ICE rhetoric.
I have put forward a vision alongside so many others to say that ICE should be abolished.
So New York City's sanctuary mayor wants to abolish ICE, but there's a problem, because we've been learning over the last several weeks that law enforcement here is completely overwhelmed by criminals, something that hasn't gone unnoticed by President Trump's border czar, who has promised to do something that's never happened before in New York City.
A lawful assembly at Delaney Hall over the weekend after 6 people were arrested following days of violent protest.
What do you say to people who say language like abolish ICE or unhelpful for the Democratic Party?
I think if we've listened to them before and look where we are. I think it's time to develop a new vision for this party.
So DHS responded, slamming Mayor Mamdani in a statement and accusing him of, quote, turning New York City into a shield for violent criminal illegal aliens to reoffend and create more innocent victims.
Many New Yorkers share, and I also do believe that ICE as an entity is one that should be abolished and that we should return to an immigration system that has more humanity at the heart of it.
Well, the ones we're charging with crimes, the one that, you know, they go from protesting to criminal activity, insulting our officers and damaging government property, most of them from out of state. This is a well-planned, established thing they're doing.
So the border czar is vowing the largest ever ICE crackdown on New York City. But what everyone's missing is this wouldn't have to happen if New York's governor didn't team up with the mayor to pass laws with the intent of abolishing ICE, stopping them from doing their jobs, which federal law mandates across the entire state, making it a sanctuary for criminals who will now be safe in jails and in police custody. Plus, it bans ICE from protecting themselves and their identities from the radicals who promise to find out who they are, where they live, and speak to their families. And it does this by banning them from wearing the same masks their assailants wear. But here's the thing. No state can pass a law that bans the federal government from doing what it is legally required to do, which means all of this is political. And when the border czar says he's gonna surge New York City like never before, he'll be able to do it and get away with it. But the mobs don't care about that. They just care about destroying the city and getting rid of law enforcement regardless of what badge they're wearing. And even though this new set of laws is totally unenforceable, that's not why they were passed. Nope, the real reason we've now got these laws on the books in New York is so that there can be something politicians can point to and say, see, ICE is breaking our laws. What they're doing is against the law. What they're doing is illegal. We banned this, but they do it anyways, all during an election year to try and generate momentum for a political party that is severely lacking it right now. But is this plan even gonna work? Immigration is a huge deal for Americans who just lived through years of a wide open border and saw sanctuaries like New York roll out the red carpet, so to speak, for federal fugitives with luxury hotel rooms, while hundreds of thousands remain homeless on the streets of our country. And as normal people watch what's happening in places like New York, they're asking themselves, is it really a good idea to surrender to these radicals and elect candidates they support? How could you do that in your city or town and not expect this to happen? Watch. Yeah, you know, that's pretty crazy. Those individuals, I don't know who they voted for, but I could take a wild guess. If there's a candidate these individuals want and you put them in office, this kind of thing is gonna come to your backyard faster than you can say, close the border. And what's crazy about this is the same cities experiencing constant rioting and agitation with the federal government. These are the same places where people are struggling with insane rents and insane grocery prices nobody can afford. And while everyone, including the politicians running these places, say they care about public safety, the way they demonstrate that is by fighting every single day to remove law enforcement and downsize it and defund it. ICE just happens to be the law enforcement agency they hate most right now, but after ICE is gone, it'll be the local police, and then what? Which is a real shame, because these sanctuary police can't do anything to control their local criminals, but ICE sure can if that criminal happens to be in the country illegally. But listen to what the mayor has to say about the one law enforcement agency New Yorkers might actually have to listen to if they show up and start arresting people that aren't supposed to be here and are not improving serving our country at all.
This is partially why I have put forward a vision alongside so many others to say that ICE should be abolished.
So the mayor wants to see ICE abolished. Just like he said in the past, he wants to see big changes at the NYPD, which reveals what we're really witnessing here with all of this anti-ICE hatred coming out in a midterm election year. This is the front lines of the anti-law enforcement agenda, which is actually an attack on all of us. Because the police exist to defend the rights of the law-abiding. But if you get rid of them, if you downsize them, if you tell them to stop enforcing the law, whether that's local law or whether that's immigration law, you take away the rights of the law-abiding and you put them in danger. And the reason these things are so popular in sanctuary cities is because the enabling of lawless behavior does something special for the political folks that support such initiatives. It gets rid of the people who oppose them, giving them permanent political power. But are the American people really gonna be on board with this sort of thing?
Democrats, when it comes to immigration, where are Democrats failing?
Yeah, okay, where are Democrats failing? Because look at this, you got a 15-point switcheroo, right? Republicans are doing something right in the voters' minds, but more than that, Democrats are doing something wrong. What do voters want from Democrats? They want them to moderate. That's what they want. They want Democrats to move to the center on immigration. Immigration, Dems should move to the center. We're talking about 59% of all voters. But more than that, look at this. There is wide agreement across socioeconomic classes and racial and ethnicity classes. Look at this. 51% of black voters, 54% of Latino voters, 59% of white college voters, and 67%, let's come over to Erica's side of the screen, 67% of white non-college voters all agree they want Democrats to move to the center on immigration. Just 18% of voters want Democrats to shift to the left on immigration. So part of this is Donald Trump and the Republican Party and what they're implementing on immigration, but it's also what Democrats are offering. And at this point, what Americans think and voters think that Democrats are offering, they are offering an agenda that is too far to the left on immigration.
And it's not changing. Mayors like Mr. Mamdani in New York City, they're not going to moderate their position on immigration. They want to abolish ICE right now. They say ICE does absolutely nothing to keep our country safe, but Americans don't believe that. Americans think if somebody breaks the country's laws and comes into the country without permission, there should be some sort of consequence. That's the moderate position here, is that there should be a consequence for breaking the law, not zero consequence. And people understand that law and order here starts at the country's border and then makes its way into the communities inside the country, because the less fugitives and the less criminals you have entering the country without permission, the less crime dangerous individuals are going to commit once they're here. It's very simple, but the opposite of this is happening in New York. This is a place that enables criminals. This is a place that tells them that they will be protected, not only from the federal government if they break immigration law, but also from the consequences of pretty much any criminal act they want to commit. Where else do you see all of the products at CVS locked up like this, where the entire store is glass? This is happening in these sanctuary cities that enable criminals because their local laws won't put people in jail for things like stealing. And they let them out of jail just in time for the next riot, which could be in the middle of Times Square or the middle of Central Park. Doesn't matter. These things are happening everywhere. But here's what you have to understand. After President Trump won a massive election, something happened which perfectly explains why you have people who are not moderating their positions in these sanctuary cities and the rest of the country looking at this moving away from it. You have a great divergence here, and this is very interesting, and it really tells you where the country is headed over the next couple of months.
Abolished. What do you say to people who say language, and there's Democrats in DC who say language like abolish ICE or unhelpful for the political health of the Democratic Party?
I think if we've listened to them before and look where we are. I think it's time to develop a new vision for this party, one that is unflinching in its beliefs.
New vision. A new vision for the party, which is not going to be a moderate vision at all. And there's a very important reason for that. How did Mr. Mamdani get elected? He ran proclaiming that he was a socialist. He did not hide that, and the voters were like, we want that. And he also said he wants to abolish ICE. He's been saying that the entire time. And the voters here in New York were like, we want that. But the rest of America, as we just saw, doesn't want that. And the reason this happened is because after Trump won the presidency, all of the socialist energy in America, it had to go somewhere. But where's it going to go? It's not coming to Florida. It's not coming to places that voted overwhelmingly for a secure border and a great country. No, it's gotta go to these places, these hotbeds, these Los Angeleses, these Chicagos, these Portland, Oregons, these New York cities, all the energy in the entire country that supports this crazy left field agenda. It's only going to these select politicians scattered around the country. That's why they're so popular nationally, even though their points aren't popular nationally at all, if that makes sense. You've got a guy like Zoran Mamdani. Every radical everywhere wants a mayor like that in their city. It just can only happen in the few places that are left that are voting for this kind of thing. And we're seeing this right now just across the water in Newark, New Jersey, where this ICE detention facility is, where the newly elected governor did everything she could to hide her true beliefs and appear as a moderate to get elected, only to flip the script on the voters and go full Mamdani once she got into office. Coming out against the federal government, talking about how ICE is in the wrong and how they need to go. But these politicians, they think they're winning at the local level with a national agenda that most Americans don't support, and they think no one's going to do anything about it. But is that correct?
Well, the ones we're charging with crimes, the one that, they go from protesting to criminal activity, insulting our officers and damaging government property, most of them from out of state. Look, these are paid protesters. We got facial recognition of people from Portland. They're at Portland riots, and many from the Minnesota. This is a well-planned, established thing they're doing. This isn't homegrown. There's a lot of local people there to protest peacefully, and they certainly can do that. But the violence, majority of violence, not all of the majority is coming from out of town people.
Now, what does that mean in the context of the Newark, New Jersey ICE facility? Who's out of town? Well, that would be people just across the water in New York City, and this Newark ICE facility serves the needs of the New York City area. So you've got people converging on this local area where you have this facility, and they're coming from everywhere. They're coming from all of these radical hotbeds. They're coming from all of these places that are the last strongholds of socialist energy in America that repulse most Americans who don't want communism, want to own their own home, don't want to have it taken away by the government, want to have law and order, want to have safe streets. They're coming here, they're causing chaos, and the governors and the politicians that think they're benefiting from this, that think they're creating some sort of mass movement in our country, they're about to find out the hard way that that is not allowed. And you know something very interesting? The crowds at this year's riots are very thin. They do not have hordes of individuals. We're not talking about thousands of people like we saw last summer at this facility. And that's because these groups that are being funded by all these nonprofits that have been getting cut off from the federal piggy bank, they don't have the money they used to have to stage these uprisings.
So New York is saying abolish ICE and zero cooperation.
Zero.
The governor and mayor teaming up to make sure that with the progress you were making with Eric Adams is going to just disappear. So what's going to be your approach to New York? You're going to stay away now?
No, I don't keep my promise to Governor Hochul. I met with Governor Hochul a couple months ago. I explained to her how we dealt with Minnesota, right? If we can work with the sheriffs and arrest a bad guy in the safety and security of a jail, that means less teams into the neighborhoods, which causes a lot of panic, a lot of problems, right? I said, but if you sign the legislation that I think you're getting about ready to sign, that means I'm going to send more agents to New York, because now rather than one guy arresting one bad guy in a jail, now we got to send a whole team into the neighborhood to find this person that don't want to be found, because officer safety reasons, now we got to arrest this guy in his turf. He has access to no weapons. I told her it's safer for the community, it's safer for the officers, it's safer for the aliens to have these cooperations with the jails.
Well, that's not going to happen anymore. And to understand why there's going to be a new surge of ICE agents in New York, you have to look at what New York just did, because you see New York has sanctuary cities like the city itself, which don't cooperate with ICE and won't allow ICE into the jails. But there are counties around New York that will allow that. And one of those is Nassau County. They've got all kinds of agreements with ICE to go in there and arrest gang members and fugitives. They let them into the jails. They tell ICE when they've got a dangerous criminal. But now that's no longer allowed. Now the entire state is locked into sanctuary state status. And now these cooperation agreements, any arrangements between ICE and a local sheriff or local police force, that's all off the table right now. If a federal fugitive gets arrested anywhere in the state of New York, no one's allowed to tell the federal government. And those people can now remain on the streets and get released by our revolving door jails and our soft on crime courts and go right back to doing what they were doing. That directly makes New York a haven for criminals. And you've essentially abolished ICE to an extent if you won't allow them to do their jobs and if you stop helping them. But the border czar says, we're not going to allow that to happen. We're not going to go anywhere. And now I actually, as a reaction to this, have to send even more resources here to do the job that needs to be done to protect the American people. But this isn't about protecting the American people to local politicians. This is about them benefiting from energy they think is aligned against President Trump and against ICE, so that they can control and increase their control of these last few strongholds. And what we're seeing here are battle lines being drawn politically across this country, with most of America agreeing that a strong border and laws and order bring down things like inflation and crime and unaffordability, but with sanctuary politicians preaching the exact opposite because that's what their voters want. And you got to understand that in a place like New York, the mobs want to see socialism. They want to see the theft of private property. They want to see buildings taken away from landlords that are making money renting places to people. They want to see businesses hit with fines and get shut down. They want to see all of this, and they think it's some great thing.
Border czar is threatening to send more ICE agents to New York. You're going
to see more ICE agents you ever seen in New York City, and it's coming.
We've heard threats time and time again from the federal administration. We want to be very clear about the fact that our values, our laws are non-negotiable. We are proud to be a sanctuary city. We are proud to be a city where of 8.5 million people, more than 3 million are immigrants, and we will fight any of these threats tooth and nail to ensure that this keeps being the city that we love and the city we live in.
Oh, very interesting. So here we're seeing it. We're seeing how the actions of the federal government are already being preached to be this illegal breach of the freedoms of 3 million immigrants. Meanwhile, there's no differentiation made between people who are in the country legally and who have done things the right way and people who break America's laws and are here without permission. And this is all on purpose, but we're seeing everything. The full court press, so to speak, to make it look like America is being taken over by some rogue federal agency when that's not the case at all. Instead, it's being taken over by criminals in these sanctuaries. And here's how this connects to socialism. Enabling lawlessness and enabling the destruction and theft of private property just helps the government do it. Because if you've got people that own a school bus company or own an apartment building or own some sort of business, well, in a socialist regime, those folks are the oppressors. Those folks are the enemy. And if the mobs want to take their anger out on it, so what? In fact, that just justifies the local government for coming along and seizing that business or seizing that property, because nobody here believes in private wealth. Nobody here believes that some private company should create jobs and pay people to do something so that they can live on their own apart from the government. Nope. Because once that starts happening, these folks that are supposed to be the oppressors and the problem with society actually become the saviors of it. They actually save people by creating jobs from a life of poverty, which is what socialism is going to give them, which is why socialism can't have any competition, and why politicians that say they proclaim this are totally not against riots targeting the federal government or targeting businesses. So what? It actually helps them. At least that's what they think.
We have heard time and again threats of increases in immigration enforcement across our city. I want to be very clear about the fact that I believe that ICE raids are cruel. They are inhumane. They do nothing to serve in the interest of public safety. I've shared that directly with the president. I've shared that in public. It is a feeling that many New Yorkers share. And I also do believe that ICE as an entity is one that should be abolished and that we should return to an immigration system that has more humanity at the heart of it. And
so, okay, if you abolish the enforcement mechanism for America's immigration system, if you just totally get rid of it, then there's going to be no enforcement. So that must be what the mayor of New York City means when he says we need to return to an immigration system that has more humanity in it. What he's talking about is zero enforcement. And when he says return, how far back in the past would he be talking about if he's talking about returning to a system that has more humanity in it? Well, he's just talking about 2020 to 2024 when the border was wide open and when ICE wasn't allowed to arrest anybody who was here without permission. So what they want is the most recent humane immigration system we had, which wasn't a system at all. There was no enforcement. That's not a system. That doesn't work. That doesn't protect people. That allows criminals to get into your sanctuary. But again, as we've seen, that's not a problem at all for these politicians who just want to demonize those who are in charge of a consequence and those who wear a badge.
You know, as much as this is an off-topic question, we're also discussing the World Cup. The World Cup is supposed to be a celebration of the world as a whole. And some of the decisions that we've seen been taken by the federal administration, be it the denial of visas for journalists from certain countries or the rejection of a visa for a coach of a team, as well as single-day visas for specific foreign national teams. This is anathema to what this tournament is supposed to be about.
Okay, so if the World Cup is some amazing thing and we should all be so excited about it, how do you have the World Cup if none of the countries involved in the World Cup have borders? How do you even know what countries are playing if they don't have immigration systems? And why does America have to be the only country in this tournament that doesn't have one? That's what's so fascinating about all of this rhetoric. It's eloquent, but it's wrong. And that's the problem with all of this. It sounds great. It sounds like it's all sewn together very well, but these points make absolutely no sense. We don't have a World Cup unless countries have borders. It's so bizarre. But now we're seeing the battle lines being drawn. We're seeing a division between the socialist strongholds of America and the rest of the country, where people obviously want these politicians to moderate, which they're not going to do because at the local level, they benefit from all of this. What do you think about that? I'll see you in the next video.